What's up guys, this is RBG hitting you up with another Marvel Spider-Man PS4 update. It's been over 2 months since I did one of these videos and you guys have been asking to hear my thoughts on the slew of footage we got at this year's E3. So I'm just going to elaborate on some things I noticed, but before we talk about any of that, we gotta address the big elephant in the room. A couple days ago, someone probably did something they didn't intend on doing. During an opening showcasing at VK Fest in St. Petersburg, they gave players access to Spider-Man PS4's demo. But essentially what fans got wasn't a demo, but most likely the final product or a work in progress of the game. This wouldn't be the first time someone at Sony or Insomniac threw the baby out with the bathwater. A couple months ago, they accidentally released a trailer for the Iron Spider suit a week before its scheduled unveiling. The video was taken down and re-uploads from various channels suffered the same fate, but that didn't necessarily take away from the hype of the announcement as fans began giving theories on how the suit would function. And the official modified version of the trailer was released, which gave possible hints that the homemade suit would make it into the game. So yeah, Marvel's Spider-Man has somewhat of a muddy track record when it comes to leaks. Apparently, whoever the lucky individual playing was got to experience the opening act, boss battles, and a gist of what the game's mechanics will entail. I was able to nab a few snippets of the gameplay before it was ultimately removed, but fearing that my video might get stricken down, I might not be able to show you guys what I saw. So you'll have to settle with a narrative breakdown and picture it in your mind. But anyways, we get a closer look at the classic Spider-Man uniform in action. We had already gotten a brief look through some of the extensive footage provided by Game Informer, and we recently got a better look from the story trailer that was released at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. For those of you who haven't been following any other coverage, we actually begin the game wearing the classic outfit shortly before acquiring the advanced one. The footage starts off showing the streets of New York in chaos as a series of police cars dart onto the scene, giving Spider-Man a trail of flashing red and blue lights to follow. The destination is an intersection exploding with the sound of gunfire, and men dressed head to toe in black with hints of purple are opening fire on the police officers huddled behind their cars and vans. A red fuel truck approaches and rams into the police barricade at such a force that the fuel tank explodes. The police are knocked back and the gunmen use the moment of confusion to attack. They raise their guns to open fire but soon realize that they are holding nothing but air. Spider-Man has yoinked all the guns out of their hands and lands at their feet, confident and ready to fight. And that's when you realize that the conflict serves as a combat tutorial to give the player an idea of how the gameplay will function. Now, the instructions and heads-up display were all translated in Russian, but from what I've seen, the gameplay looks very intuitive. Based on simple observation, you'd think it plays like the Batman Arkham games where you have a counter button to get you out of sticky situations, but you then notice that the combat is way deeper than that. Like I noticed when the Spider Sense activated, the player was prompted to press circle to flip out of the way of an incoming attack. You could also jump off of or slide under the enemy, and that's something that I think will continue to change as you advance through the game. Because we saw Spider-Man using the walls and some of the pillars in the raft to launch himself at inmates. You can essentially bounce between enemies like a pinball, and the camera kind of gets a little blurry to where you can't really keep up with Spider-Man's movement and you kind of lose track of some of the enemies that you fight. But regardless of the occasional confusion, the combat looks great and it looks like they're going to allow for a high level of choice. Like the game looks to be borrowing a lot of good elements that made previous entries great, and the animations look so fluid. But anyways, after you take care of the first wave of thugs, reinforcements arrive in a dump truck armed with pistols. They open fire, but the tutorial quickly pops up showing the player that he can disarm them with a quick web shot. The battle proceeds to Fish Towers where you will ultimately do battle with the big man himself. Now, this is where things get a little iffy for me because the fight with Kingpin looks to be uninspired compared to the other boss battles I've seen in the game. But then again, this is the first boss battle, so it's most likely setting up for some crazy shit later on. Unlike the Shocker boss battle we saw a few weeks back, this fight seems to be less choreographed than about remembering patterns and more of a free-for-all of you and the Kingpin just exchanging blows. It looks like he tries to charge at you and put you in some type of grapple hold, and he throws a few heavy hooks at you while his mob tries to surround you. Everything just looks a little underwhelming, like it's a beat 'em up, but then again, the Kingpin isn't necessarily one of those villains that's gonna give you that grand scaled fight. If anything, this could be an indication that each boss fight will be tailored to each specific boss, like meaning that some of the fights will feel unique and require something different from the player. I just feel that it could have been a little bit better, because if you ask me, Kingpin's gameplay style in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a lot more creative. But I'm not going to fully take away from this fight because the player didn't really display different ways to approach him. I mean, he got taken out after a brutal tackle from the Kingpin, so we'll just have to wait and see how the boss battle plays out in the final product. But anyways, the footage gives us a closer look at Peter's apartment, which is cluttered with a lot of trash. Interestingly, the setting plays out as an expository introduction of Peter's life events leading up to where he's at now through various articles and sticky notes. As the camera pans about, you'll notice all kinds of little shoutouts and Easter eggs lining his walls. You'll see newspaper clippings describing villains' attacks on the cities, and opinion pieces about Spider-Man as a menace, and reminders to pick up Aunt May and pay the rent. Everything feels like you're watching a CG movie that swiftly transitions into gameplay. Now, we know that Peter is some kind of scientist in this game, though his exact vocation is still unknown. It's clear that he's a gifted inventor and engineer though, since he's obviously responsible for his own web shooters and he can be seen making adjustments to his mask as well. But a lot of fans have theorized that his new advanced suit shares a similar origin to the MCU Spider-Man suit, meaning that Peter may have received help from Tony Stark crafting it, but based on some of the footage it's been debunked. Because now we know that Peter's more than capable of crafting his own unique equipment. And this is something that I gotta give a sigh of relief to, because Tony's involvement with the Spider-Man MCU suit still hasn't grown on me. Being somewhat self-sufficient and creating his own accessories has always been a high watermark for Spider-Man, and it's what makes us relate to the character. He's basically the yin to Batman's yang, because he doesn't have the funds to build fancy gadgets. But what he lacks in currency, he makes up with his genius intellect. But anyways, the footage does reveal an Easter egg that may hint at Tony Stark's presence in the game. If you look closely, you'll notice a sticky note that says, and I quote, "Call TS," which could be a reminder for him to get in contact with Tony Stark. So take of that what you will. Moving on, I want to briefly talk about a character that will most likely not make it into the game. As we all know, fans have been really excited about the different suits that could possibly make it into Spider-Man PS4. And one of the most highly requested suits has been the famous black symbiote and the inclusion of Venom. When one fan asked how big Venom will be in the game, the leading designer Jist responded on Twitter with the following: "Too big to fit into Spider-Man PS4. Short and straight to the point. There are so many villains that Insomniac could have picked for the most ambitious Spidey game to date, but Jist revealed they decided not to include Venom. But Miss Chu could just be trying to throw the fans off Insomniac's scent, because fans have speculated that Venom could appear in DLC, and there would be no better way to cash in on the hype of Venom's self-entitled film that's slated for release later this year. Waiting until the character reestablishes himself in theaters after Topher Grace's controversial Spider-Man 3 performance is a clever way to shift more games in a sequel. Now, judging from how this game takes place in the later years of Spider-Man's career, I wouldn't mind seeing a more seasoned version of Venom/Eddie Brock. If it's already adapting Mr. Negative's story, this would be the perfect opportunity to feature anti-Venom. Fans who are particular with that storyline know that Eddie Brock wasn't in the best of shapes. After he debonded from the symbiote, traces of it was still left in his body, and unlike other iterations, this version of Eddie Brock is terminally ill from cancer, and one thing that's kept him alive was the Venom suit. And one day when he was praying at a church, he was discovered by philanthropist/crime lord Martin Lee, who hired Brock to work as a cook at his homeless shelter. After a simple touch from Martin Lee, Eddie's cancer was cured. In that process, he accidentally infused the remnants of the symbiote in Eddie's bloodstream, causing him to fuse with his white blood cells. This created a new anti-Venom symbiote, which manifested when the original symbiote attempted to leave its then current host and return to Eddie Brock. This is a story I wouldn't mind seeing adapted into video game form, because we've seen the normal Venom story get played to death. For once, I'd like to play as the heroic anti-Venom who simply wants to help people who have terminal illnesses. That would be pretty cool. As far as all the coverage we've gotten at E3 is concerned, I'd have to say that my expectations continue to be blown out of the water. The buildings look realistically huge, and the way in which you swing seems to flow consistently. Like if I simply choose to make a U-turn or accidentally swing into a building that I didn't want to swing to, it won't necessarily affect my speed. Having my momentum slowed down because I bumped into a building has been the bane of my existence. But now it just seems like there's no slowing down at all, since Spidey will run up a wall or perform parkour. With that said, I'm still a little bummed that we haven't seen anything pertaining to the upgrade system for the combat. I'm really eager to see a worthy successor of Spider-Man 2's combat upgrades, but I guess I'll have to wait until the game's actual release. But anyways, I think I've rambled on long enough. What are your thoughts on the leaked footage? Have you seen the Kingpin boss battle? And if so, what do you think? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on future content. But if you really enjoyed the video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it on social media platforms with all your friends and followers. I love what I do, and I do it all for you guys. Once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I will catch you guys later. Peace out.